This broadcast will start in 15 seconds. This broadcast will start in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The Voice of Stockton. For more information on The Voice of Stockton, go to thevoiceofstockton.org.
The views and opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of KXVS The Voice of Stockton or its parents, affiliates, management, and staff.
How's it going, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another amazing episode of the Phone Booth here on KXVS, the Voice of Stockton. My name is Ed Heitman, and joining me in the studio today is my good friend and co-host, Brian Rodriguez.
Heyo.
Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with what the Phone Booth is all about, the Phone Booth is a show completely dedicated to pop culture. Anything from movies to TV shows to video games to anime, you name it, and we do our very best to cover it. Now, we've had a good amount of news that happened within this week, and we have some good content to discuss. But before we do that, let's enter our weekly wrap-up, where we discuss some of the stuff that happened within the week. And I'll lead off first. So, for those of you who don't know, Joaquin Phoenix recently announced that he was going to be doing a standalone Joker movie, where he was going to be playing as the character. And we got a lot of interesting people announced as, people who are going to be in this. And the latest installment to this casting list was Alec Baldwin?
Alec Baldwin.
Yes. And he said he was going to be playing the role of Thomas Wayne, Bruce Wayne's father. And what we heard was that this was going to be like he was going to be a cheesy 1980s, spray-tanned, kind of Donald Trump-ish character. And I had mixed opinions on it, but it turned out that later on, about 2 days after the production, it seems as though he dropped out of this entire thing. He's not going to be playing the role of Thomas Wayne, and we're not sure who's going to replace him, but find it pretty odd that he was replaced within that he dropped out within 2 days of production, man.
Yeah, it's odd. He implied in his he made two statements. In the first one, he sort of implied he was never involved. And then in his second statement, he said, no, I was involved, but I quit the movie. There are plenty of other people that can play this type of character. And the rumor is, and this is a strong rumor, there's been no confirmation, is that he wasn't actually told the details of being a Donald Trump-like character beforehand. For those that don't know, for the past few years, Alec Baldwin has been playing Donald Trump on SNL. And it appears that when that leaked and he learned about it, he decided, you know what, I don't want to be the guy that's known for playing Trump, and left.
That's, and that's what a lot of people are speculating, and there's good reason to speculate about that.
And again, it's just a rumor. There's no confirmation on this. It could be a completely different reason.
But if that is the case, then it totally makes sense that that's why he decided to drop out. As we said, he seems to be getting known more and more only as the guy who's good at playing as Donald Trump. And Alec Baldwin's done a lot of really good work, besides Donald Trump. He's a very well-known, very well-respected actor, and I can see why he would want to drop out if this is the case, because to just be known as some guy who can do a running joke constantly, and if there's like a possibility that in most movies that he's going to be in, there's what they're going to want him to be as, if I were him, I'd probably want to drop out as well, But anyways, that was it for that little news bit, and I'll pass it over to my good friend Brian for the next one.
Battlefield 5 has been delayed by a month, leaving its October release date and moving into November. Now, this has been following a bit of I say a bit, that's kind of generous, a controversial period for Battlefield 5.
Definitely.
When it was first revealed and showed a bit... There are women in the game. You know what? I'm not going to dance around it. You can play as a woman, which, in certain aspects that this showed is not historically accurate. In some places, there just weren't women fighting in World War II. That's a fact.
There might actually have been at some point in time. But as far as we know in history books, that's not the case.
And there were some fronts where there were actual women fighting in it, and but there were some places that there weren't. But there's been a large backlash to the amount of female inclusion. which then led the game's creative director to say, if you don't like the game, don't buy it. Which has led to record low pre-order numbers for the game.
It's kind of expected when you tell somebody, you know, if you don't like my game, don't buy it. You shouldn't be surprised when a lot of people decide to not buy your game anymore because you're openly saying, hey, forget you. I don't care if you don't want to buy my game or not. Stay away. This game ain't for you.
And this is also following a bit of a smaller controversy over the potential cosmetic microtransactions in the game. In trailers, we have seen a female soldier with a hook prosthetic.
I want to say a mechanical arm, kind of.
Yeah, it was a sort of a mechanical hook prosthetic holding a spiked cricket bat on the battlefield, which I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure never actually happened in World War II. I don't think there was any soldier like that. If I'm wrong, please tell me, because that sounds amazing.
Yes.
But you also had a British soldier on, a European front with a katana on his back, which also was not a thing. And it appears like they are sort of making light of the World War II setting in order to sell more cosmetic microtransactions. And this is also on top of the fact that they put it in a really bad release window. They sort of wedged it between the release of, I believe it's Black Ops 4 in 1 week, and then it's Fallout 76 the week afterwards, which is a similar release date to what happened to Titanfall 2. It was wedged between Battlefield 1, the, fifth game, and, I'm not even going to get into that.
Took place in World War I.
Yeah, Battlefield 1 and Infinite Warfare, which it sold poorly. It was apparently a very good game, but it sold just abysmally. So all of this combined, it seems like has led to Battlefield 5 getting postponed to a November release date. I believe it's not November 11th, but somewhere towards the middle of November.
I think it was the 15th.
15th.
Yeah. And this whole controversy that started, regarding him telling people, if you don't like my game, don't buy it. This all revolved around his daughter. He was a bit concerned about the fact that one day his daughter will look at him and say, Dad, how come I can't create a female character in this game? Because of the fact that this game the World War II didn't really have many women in it. So he decided, you know what, forget it. Even if it's World War II, I'm including women. And we're going to make that a thing. And I feel that this wouldn't have been an issue if he'd handled it a bit more carefully.
Yeah, with game development, it's a tough line between historical accuracy and inclusion, and I think, honestly, with the way shooter video games work especially, they really need to lean towards core inclusion, because, like with Battlefield 1, they had an issue where none of the guns during World War I were really as powerful as they need to be. They weren't all fully automatic, they weren't, this and that you need to be for a competitive shooter, so they fudged it. They messed with it, they made them more powerful than was historically accurate. No one really cared, because people don't really care that much about historical accuracy. I mean, you can't just go willy-nilly with it, but...
As long as you have good reasoning for it, it's fine.
Yeah.
But, like I said, he could have handled it a bit more carefully. He could have reasonably explained to people, well, I mean, there's a good reason why I'd like to add a bit more inclusion into the game. And if it sacrifices a bit of historical accuracy, I'm willing to take that risk. You would have still gotten some outrage, but some people would be like, okay, well, that's reasonable. You have a good point, I suppose. We'll go for it. But just openly saying, if you're not cool with this idea, don't buy it. I don't want this game to be for you.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people are perceiving this as. And, I mean, of course, it's just like, I don't know, the whole thing's spiraling out of control. Anyways, on to the next topic. So Rick and Morty co-creator and star, Justin Roiland, has signed on to do a new animated series with Hulu. It's called Solar Opposites. The series will center around a family of aliens living in rural America. Now, I'm fine with this idea because the concept, usually, it works pretty well.
Yeah.
Rick and Morty, there was that whole episode where the family was living around while the whole alien syndicate was there.
Yeah, there was the 90s sitcom Third Rock from the Sun, which I still think is one of the best sitcoms NBC's put out.
That's what I was thinking too, and I was also thinking of they're not necessarily aliens, but people from the future with Phil of the future. That was also pretty good, So this concept could do pretty well, especially with Justin Roiland working on this. I know he was like half the mind in Rick and Morty, the other half was Dan Harmon, but Justin Roiland does a really good job coming up with ideas, and especially with pulling off different character personalities and voices. So I definitely hope that he does some voice acting in this. But not really too sure what characters he'd be pulling off.
Yeah, and there's no word on whether Dan Harmon's involved. It looks like this is really just Justin Roiland's production. It doesn't look like Harmon's involved.
Yeah, right now Dan Harmon's kind of been laying on the down low because of the whole celebrity Twitter controversy that boomed after the firing of James Gunn. He had some directed towards him as well, and now he's we're not really sure what's going on with Dan Harmon at the moment. So that could be a reasonable explanation why he probably isn't involved. Also, just the fact that Justin Roiland probably wants to do his own thing as well. Yeah. Doesn't want to be known as just the guy who works on Rick and Morty. He wants to be able to branch off and explore other possibilities, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
I'm down for getting more Justin Roiland and more programs and games. I know that their video game company, Squanch Games, is working on Trover Saves the Universe, which looks odd but also fun at the same time. It definitely has its Rick and Morty style kind of humor.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited. I can't wait to hear a little bit more about this series once it comes out.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this because A, we love Justin Roiland, and B, he was born in Stockton. So,
yes.
Local celebrity.
Definitely. In fact, he was even commemorated during Stockton Con. His dad, of course, accepted the trophy, the reward from Christina Fugazi, a regular comer here to the station and everything. But yeah, I'm glad we're talking about that because Justin Roiland is one of the really well-known people to come from Stockton and from the same college that we go to, too. He was also a Delta College student.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. So for the next topic, I'm going to pass it over to my good friend Brian.
Let's see. DC's Doom Patrol TV series has finally cast their villain. Firefly alum Alan Tudyk, who was also in Star Wars Rogue One. He was in DC's Powerless on NBC, which I thought was amazing. Anyway, he will be playing the villain Mr. Nobody, a living shadow capable of draining the sanity from someone.
That is an interesting concept for a villain. I'm afraid I don't really know too much about Doom Patrol. I know that this series is supposed to be appearing on DC's streaming service, DC Universe.
Yeah, it's sort of a sequel series to the upcoming Titans.
Yeah, and that's something. I'm not really looking forward to Titans, but I'm looking forward to Doom Patrol because there seems to be a good amount of popular actors in here. I believe Vin Diesel is working on the project as well.
Heard rumors about that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I believe there was some on-set footage or whatever of him with the director and everything. But it seems like an interesting idea, So, I'm looking forward to that. So I'll handle this next bit and the next little news bit after that as well, because the last bit's a little tragic, and I don't mind covering that one. So the Producers Guild of America is planning on honoring Kevin Feige. If you're not familiar with who Kevin Feige is, he's one of the head honchos down at Marvel Cinematic Studios. They'll be honoring him with the David O. Seisnick Achievement Award. He'll be presented with the award at the 30th Annual PGA Awards in recognition for his work orchestrating the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, Brian, would you mind giving us a little bit of context on what this award is presented for?
It doesn't have a set definition. It's really just for great works in producing. Clint Eastwood won it one year a few years ago. It's really just for excellence in producing, which I think Kevin Feige is worthy of. He has been really the backbone of probably the most ambitious and most successful film venture in the history of film.
Yeah, he's definitely done a lot of really good work regarding the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So you know what? I think I gotta agree. He definitely deserves this award. And they're planning on honoring him, and I hope that he really does get the award because I'll be genuinely happy about that.
Yep.
Now, unfortunately, we'll have to end the wrap-up with some depressing news. And I also covered this on my YouTube channel and everything, so that's why I don't mind handling the news for this particular topic. On August 26th, this last Sunday, An unnamed individual opened fire on innocent bystanders at a mall in Jacksonville, Florida, during a Madden 19 tournament. We're not going to give any details to the shooter, nor do we want to say how many people were harmed during this incident. But what we do want to say, however, is that we're extremely upset that this whole situation has happened and that somebody would do such a thing. Mass shootings are always a horrible thing, no matter what perspective you try and put it in. And I believe this is one of the very first times that this has even happened at a video game tournament, let alone a Madden one. But that's beside the point. But we just wanted to say from me and Brian, we just wanted to say that we're deeply, deeply upset that this has happened, and for any survivors of this incident and people who were around during this incident, we're deeply sorry that this happened to you. We did not expect, we don't think that any of you deserved anything like this to happen, and we're really sorry that this happened to you.
Absolutely.
But that, ladies and gentlemen, just about wraps up our weekly wrap-up. And now it's time to cover our next segment, Trailer Talk. In this segment, Brian and I discuss the latest trailers to come out within the week and share our opinions on them. And we have 5 trailers for discussion, and the links are available in the description of this video, so feel free to check them out. And yeah, just feel free to give them a watch as we discuss them. Now, the first trailer we're going to talk about is the final trailer to the new Predator movie that's going to be coming out sometime soon. This is the last trailer before its official release.
Now, we should mention this is a red band trailer, so this does not have to conform to standard trailer censoring. They swear, they can show a lot of gore in it. It's essentially... It's the type of the trailer they can only show before R-rated movies, really. So just a warning before you go into it.
Definitely. Now, in case you're not familiar with the general synopsis, this movie is starring Jacob Tremblay, Sterling K. Brown, Yvonne Strahovski, Keegan-Michael Key, and others. And the premise is when a young boy accidentally triggers the universe's most lethal hunters to return to Earth, only a ragtag crew of ex-soldiers and a disgruntled science teacher can prevent the end of the human race. And this film is directed by Shane Black. Now, in this trailer, we got a good chunk of footage that we've seen from previous trailers. We got to see the Ultimate Predator. We got to see our ragtag team of soldiers who were considered to be crazy and things like that, who are trying to hunt this guy down. But in this trailer, we also got to see the dogs. Now, in case you're unfamiliar with Predator films, every so often they have dogs that they'll sick on people, and they help hunt down individuals for the Predators to hunt and everything. And we also got to see some more of the equipment that the Predators will be using in this movie to hunt them down. And it looks good. It looks like your typical Predator movie. So, you know, it's a great popcorn film for anybody to sit down and just wants to see some action, a little bit of blood and gore. As far as story goes, I'm not really too invested in the story.
Yeah, I'll admit I'm a bit confused by where the story is going, because from the description, you know, it seems fairly straightforward. Young boy, like, it looked like in an earlier trailer, he messes with a crashed Predator ship that summons other Predators to Earth. The ragtag army crew has to fight it off. That seems fairly simple. But that's sort of thrown off when the Ultimate Predator comes in and seems to be at odds with the normal Predator. And it seems like there may actually be multiple normal Predators. I believe we saw more than one in the trailer. So I'm not really sure where the plot's going. And we do know that there had to be extensive reshoots and refilming for the third act of the film a few months ago. So it's possible that in between the trailers we got something about the last act of the film changed dramatically, so that's why there's a bit of confusion.
Yeah, I'm definitely confused about it as well, because there are multiple Predators in this trailer. And then there's also the fact that the Ultimate Predator seems to be hunting down regular Predators as well as people. So I'm not entirely sure what's happening. Though, from what I've seen from the previous Predator movie, Predators, I think it's safe to assume that at one point in time, this is a speculation, I'm not saying this is what's probably going to happen in the film, but this is my theory, that like most Predator movies, somebody's going to form an alliance with one Predator, and they're going to try and take down the Ultimate Predator. and then they leave or something like that. I don't know.
It should be noted that this film is ignoring every Predator film after the first one. It's doing sort of what Jurassic World did, where it's just ignoring everything but the first movie.
Yeah.
And they haven't said it's a reboot of any sort, so it seems like it's still in the same universe. It's just not really talking about the other stuff.
Yeah.
It's fine. It worked with Jurassic World. It can,
Definitely. So our next trailer listed. Would you like to talk about this one, Brian, or should I?
Yes, A Private War. It's starring Rosamund Pike, Jamie Dornan, and Stanley Tucci. One of the most celebrated war correspondents of our time, Mary Colvin is an utterly fearless and rebellious spirit, driven to the front lines of conflicts across the globe to give voice to the voiceless. Directed by Matthew Heineman. Now this is based off, a real person, a true story, and it looks very good. It sort of shows the psychology of the people, the reporters, that would actually willingly go into an active war zone and document it. It shows how they interact with regular people, how they interact with soldiers, how they interact with the government, and how those interactions can go sour very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Now, I gotta admit, cinematography-wise, this film looks really good. Mm-hmm. Especially in the parts where we get to see our reporter hero in the middle of war zones, explosions, gunfire. All this looks extremely realistic, which is a good thing. Because one thing that bothers me the most about true story events is when things don't look realistic. But this looks very touching, very appealing when it comes to graphics and cinematography. I have a very good feeling, as Brian and I speculated before the show, that this is probably going to be pretty good Oscar bait.
Yeah.
Just because of the fact that it's a true story.
It has all the hallmarks of a classic Oscar winner movie.
Yeah, definitely. Anyways, I'm going to move on to the next trailer, and that'll be The Front Runner, starring Hugh Jackman, Vera Farmiga, Sarah Paxton, and others. American Senator Gary Hart's presidential campaign in 1988 is derailed when he's caught in a scandalous love affair, and this is directed by Jason Reitman. And this is another film that is based on a true story. Now, for one, I want to say it's good to see. I'm always glad to see Hugh Jackman in another film. Mm-hmm. I feel it's kind of unfair that most people immediately label him as Wolverine, though he has carried that title very well.
I mean, he was the character for 17 years. I think at that point you do sort of get labeled as that character.
That's true. But I mean, he's been in other good films as well. I actually liked Les Miserables when it came out. He was recently in The Greatest Showman. And the way he portrays his character in this film is pretty good.
Very subdued, which is sort of... He's not typically a very subdued character. He's typically emotes a lot, has a lot of... But this guy, the Gary Hart, the senator, seems to be very subdued, and I keep saying that word, in Jackman's portrayal. He doesn't show a lot of emotion. He's just sort of stoic.
Yeah, he's more of a serious guy, because in the film it shows like the whole love affair scandal, and people are constantly trying to talk to him about that, and he's like, I don't want to talk about that. That's not what's important right now in this country. Right now what's important is that we cover the issues that are out there and everything. And from this film, we're supposed to be able to see how he starts off really, really good, but due to this scandal, his reputation gets worse and worse and worse, and how journalists start to take advantage of the situation and whatnot. But I'm definitely excited about this film.
It looks interesting.
Yeah.
I think we kind of know how it ends, given that we never had President Gary Hart, but,
Yeah.
It could still be a fun movie.
Yeah, it's definitely a good film for people who don't know who he is or anything about that scandal, or for people who are familiar with him. It'd be the same case as The People versus O.J. Simpson, how people were kind of familiar about the scandal, but they didn't really know the specifics, and the film will give some of those specifics in order to answer a few unanswered questions. So I'm definitely excited about that. Brian, I'll pass this next trailer over to you.
Johnny English Strikes Again, starring Rowan Atkinson, Jake Lacey, Emmett and Emma Thompson, among others. Johnny English Strikes Again is the third installment of the Johnny English comedy series, with Rowan Atkinson returning as the much-loved accidental secret agent. The new adventure begins when a cyber attack reveals the identity of all active undercover agents in Britain, leaving Johnny English as Secret Service's last hope. Called out of retirement, English dives headfirst into action with the mission to find the mastermind hacker As a man with few skills and analog methods, Johnny English must overcome the challenges of modern technology to make his mission a success. Directed by David Kerr.
Now, I gotta say, this movie certainly isn't going to be for everybody. It's definitely for people who enjoy slapstick comedy, spoofing things. One main gag that they kept constantly showing in the trailer was Johnny English using a VR headset, running around thinking he was doing a simulation while he was also walking around in real life, attacking people with breadsticks, thinking that he was beating up an AI with some, nightsticks and things like that.
Pretty blatantly ignoring how VR actually works, but that's beside the point.
Yes, and that's basically That's basically what this film is. It's a ton of slapstick comedy for a good James Bond spoof. If you're a fan of Austin Powers and Mr. Bean, you'll probably be interested in this film. I might give it a watch. Probably not in theaters. I would probably wait until it comes out on on a premium channel, or until the DVD comes out. If it's at a fair price, I'll check it out. But I can't really say it is a film that I'll watch in theaters.
Yeah.
Anyways, we have one last trailer to talk about, and it's one trailer that I'm really, really excited to see the final product of.
Oh, yeah.
And that would be Bad Times at the El Royale, trailer number 2. Starring Chris Hemsworth, Dakota Johnson, John Hamm, and others. Now, the premise is that 7 strangers, each with a secret to bury, meet at Lake Tahoe's El Royale, a run-down hotel with a dark past. Over the course of one fateful night, everyone will have the last shot at redemption before everything goes to heck. I had to censor that last word. And this is directed by Drew Goddard. And this trailer just looks so amazing. It's like one of those classic murder mystery kind of films where everybody has their dark secret, but it also seems to have this glamorous, glitzy Las Vegas kind of vibe to it, mainly due to the location that they're at. This is like a hotel/casino, which happens to lay along the border, I guess, between California and Nevada, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And each character is like an individual, like your own unique staple character. You have your priest, who turns out isn't actually a priest. We have a singer. We have somebody who's, I guess, is supposed to inherit something. We find out later on that people are being watched in their rooms by management, but we don't know who management is yet. And it just looks like it's going to be such a fun movie when it finally comes out.
Yeah, it's very stylized, and they make a big emphasis on sort of 2 sides, right and wrong, black and red for the casino. There's even the fact that the entire area is split into 2 halves, one on the California side and one on the Nevada side. And it looks very good. It looks very good.
Yeah, I gotta agree, and I'm definitely excited about that. And if there's any of those trailers that we talked about that I would recommend you guys check out, it would be Bad Times at the El Royale. And that about does it for our trailer talk, ladies and gentlemen. Again, the trailers are available in our description. Feel free to check them out. We'd love to hear your guys' opinions on those trailers. Any feedback's appreciated. Now, on to our discussion piece. We have 3 discussion pieces to cover. Now, the first one I'm going to pass over to my friend Brian, because he was able to see more of the gameplay footage than I was able to so far. I only got halfway in. But we finally got official gameplay footage of Cyberpunk 2077.
Okay, so we have to start this with a caveat that, like the trailer said at least 10 different times, this is an in-development build with features that may not appear in the final product. So basically everything we're about to talk about could end up not being in the game. However, we're going to talk about it because everything we're about to talk about is super cool.
It's amazing. It is so amazing.
It looks amazing. My God. It is one of the... And again, this is a gameplay demo. This is supposed to be polished to all heck. But it looks amazing. So the entire demo was about 40 minutes long, so we can't get into everything, break down everything. But here,
it would take up our whole episode.
I mean, if we want to do another episode dedicated to it, I'd be willing to.
We could do a special segment at some point, perhaps.
Maybe. Anyway, so Before you go out and watch this gameplay demo, which I would recommend, it should be warned that it is a hard R demo.
Yes.
Language, gore, nudity, drug use, you name it, this game has it. It's
Definitely a game for adults.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so we're going to go over some bullet points. First off, the dialogue system.
Yes!
The dialogue system is, at first glance, sort of what you'd expect from, an RPG. It's got multiple choices that go in different directions. You can try to, reason with someone. You can try to use your skills to convince them. You can do this and that. There are lots of options. But you can also look around during this. And if you do that, you'll find some more options. Like at one point, a character was being interrogated at gunpoint by another individual. So you could talk to the individual that's interrogating you, or you could turn to the side to the person pointing the gun at you and actually try to grab their gun. That prompt popped up. Now, the gameplay demo didn't actually do that because they made a big point about how all these characters were much higher level than you and would probably kill you. But that's really interesting. The dialogue system isn't really locked to necessarily who you're speaking to. You could interrupt dialogue with a different action that's context appropriate.
And I
can't think of another game I've really seen that in.
Same here, because, of course, branching dialogue is always an important necessity. I remember when I started playing BioWare games for the first time, starting off with Mass Effect. And one of the things I loved so much about it was that it had its own little wheel of dialogue. And you had your own different emotions that you can go with it. And you could create your own story depending on what dialogue you used. But at the same time, with most games, except for, I want to say, Bethesda, but you'd have to exit the dialogue, is that whenever you are doing interactive dialogue with people, you are stuck in that position. You can't look around or do anything. You can't move. But this would be the very first time that you could talk to somebody and actually do other things instead of just being stuck in one position and constantly talking to somebody. So this is definitely a huge improvement, I have to say, regarding dialogue.
Yeah, another example is you're making a deal with a gang, and as you're talking to them, one of the gang members tells you to sit down. And you can choose to sit down and keep talking to them, or you could choose not to, and it actually made them actively more aggressive towards you because you weren't listening to them, you weren't doing what you were telling them. So it actually affected the negotiations going forward if you didn't choose to sit down in the middle of this dialogue option, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah. That's great, man.
It actually makes you pay attention to sort of what's going on around you, and you actually have to be involved. You don't just sort of sit back with one hand on the controller, choosing whatever prompt you want.
Mm-hmm. And for some people, that's why they typically try to avoid RPG games, because they don't want to just have to sit there and constantly move through dialogue with just one analog stick, and they're not really able to do anything. With this, they can actually have full intuition. They can actually do multiple things at once, which is a great thing.
Yeah. Okay. So the next section is what I lovingly call people hacking. And the narrator of the demo actually made a point to point out that even this feature in particular is still in development and may not be in the final game. But a little backstory first. In the typical cyberpunk genre, humanity is sort of transcended their more physical beings. They're not just flesh and blood. They've got lots of mechanical augmentations.
Implants.
Yeah,
stuff.
Implants. Whether it's a new eye that can stand things, crazy robot spider arms, and things like that. So in the trailer, they showed that after the negotiations I mentioned earlier sort of went awry, you have to fight your way out of the compound. And it showed the character in the demo actually sneaking up behind a gang member and hacking into their brain. See, all these gang members take augmentation to the extreme and are all sort of hooked up through this neural network. So by hacking into one, you can actually access the gang's database and gain the ability to mess with any gang member's augmentations. You can make their guns not fire. You can sort of make them go wild. And it's this idea of being able to not only hack into a person, which we have seen in games before, but actually being able to do it to a more advanced character and actually gain access to a network of people. I thought that was pretty cool.
I have to admit, that does sound pretty fun. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. This one is sort of a bit more standard for RPGs, but I still think it's cool. It's dozens of paths in one mission. There are so many points of choice in the mission you start out with. It starts with you going to visit this sort of big shot fixer who wants to hire you for a job. But first you have to prove yourself to him. You have to go find a this sort of contraband military tech and buy it for him from a rival gang. However, this rival gang has also recently stolen a military convoy full of weapons and things like that. So you have options. You can just go to the gang and try to negotiate with them, or you can go talk to the military contractors that have had their property stolen and try to make a deal with them. Now, the deal with them, you can either say, hey, give me the money and I'll go buy your drone and sort of hack into the system to let you in so you can kill them all, or you can just gun them down, steal the money, or you can do this and that, or you can just keep the money and gun down the gang anyway. You can go to the gang, you can negotiate with them, just buy the drone with your own money or with the money you got from the military contractor. That can go sideways any number of ways, and it's just, in one mission, they showed us at least 10 different points of significant choice, which is always good for an RPG.
Definitely. When it comes to multiple options of handling a mission, I could say that's one of the reasons why a lot of people really love open-world Bethesda games, such as Elder Scrolls and Fallout, because you're given a general mission, and there are multiple ways of handling a mission, but it's very restricted. So for Bethesda games, it's like talk to a different NPC and they might give you a separate option. You could just slaughter these people, fail the mission, collect an item or whatever. But from what you're telling me, this seems like there are dozens of different variations of being able to handle a mission, which is great. I remember last year at E3, there was a certain game that came out. It was a Tom Clancy game. I want to say it was a Rainbow Six or Ghost Recon. And one of the things that they talked about with Ghost Recon was the fact that you're able to handle a mission in multiple ways. You can either go full aggressive, you can go from a distance, you can be a bit more strategic, which was fun too. So I'm really interested in seeing the evolution of multiple paths of gameplay. And I love the fact that Cyberpunk 2077 is really trying to push how many options you have to handle a mission.
Yeah, it really does look like sort of your tabletop RPG where you can really look at any solution out of the situation and try to use it. Mm-hmm. And of course, since it's a video game, there will be limitations. You won't be able to, just start singing for the gang to try to distract them.
Yeah.
But it is an evolution and I like it. I like it a lot. Mm-hmm. Okay, the next setup is body modding, which is really integral to Cyberpunk as a genre.
Yep.
So they showed us you can go to, I believe they called him a Skinner doc. I believe.
I
probably got that wrong, but moving on. You can go to this doctor in a back alley and you can modify your body. They showed in the gameplay the two main augmentations where you actually get an eye implant that allows you to scan your surroundings. It gives you a bullet readout in your gun. It gives you a health bar. It gives you some information about enemies. And it also showed multiple other variations of this eye implant where you could get one that showed how aggressive an enemy would be to you or your likelihood of winning a fight against them. And it also showed that they got a hand implant for their gun that essentially increased the damage of the gun. Not really sure how that works in universe, but also gave it a bit more stability, which makes sense because the implant would just sort of compensate for it. Mm-hmm. They also, later on, showed what's sort of become the calling card for this game in the Mantis Blades. Now, for those of you that saw way back in 2013 the original reveal trailer for Cyberpunk, you'll remember the woman on the ground where her arms had sort of opened up to reveal two giant curved blades coming out of them. Those are what they're calling the Mantis Blades, and they showed them in action, and they are terrifying. At one point, you were sort of clinging to the ceiling above an enemy, and you drop down on them and just sort of slice them.
Ugh. Awesome.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be really great for a stealth build or a hacker build if you're wanting to go for that. Mm. And it showed there were many different brands of body modification, too. It's not just, a straight upgrade path. You can get different brands that do different things, have different effects, which is really great.
Definitely. Now, the fact about the whole augmentation thing, that really gives a more tabletop feel to it. Mm-hmm. Especially because you told me before we did the show that, for example, with the eye implant, in the trailer you're supposed to get a really basic scanner mm-hmm. that gives you a heads-up display and things like that. But you can upgrade it to where it shows people in the area, their level of hostility and everything, which sounds really fun because with the separate game that I played, the Batman Arkham series, one of the things that I really loved about that series was detective mode. How you're able to enter this like scanning mode where you're able to see all enemies in the area, you're able to see if they're carrying weapons. They're and even before that, in Batman Begins, you're able also to monitor people's heart rate and things like that. So I'm definitely interested in seeing how far you can go with body modifications, because it gives you even more of an option to build your character to whatever play style you want your character to be, which this is like the most tabletop video game I've been able to see in a long, long time.
And we keep saying that it looks like a tabletop game. Cyberpunk 2077 is actually an adaptation of an old tabletop RPG called Cyberpunk. Well, first it was Cyberpunk 2013, and then it became the more well-known Cyberpunk 2020 after that. And that's why we keep saying tabletop, is because it's literally an adaptation of a tabletop game.
Yeah, and we keep emphasizing that because certain games that get developed from tabletop games, they're not always reminiscent of its tabletop origins. Various Warhammer games, for example, instead of becoming tabletopish, they're more of a strategy game like XCOM and stuff like that. So it's really refreshing to see this game and that it seriously is trying to keep its roots. The narrator in the trailer even said, you know, we're trying to keep origins to the original pen and paper style of Cyberpunk with our own 2077 flair to it, you know, which is great.
Okay, and last but not least, there are special abilities that are separate from modifications.
Yes.
And it appears you can activate these special abilities by taking some sort of inhalant drug. It looks exactly like an inhaler. You take a puff of it. And
at least that was for the ability we got to see in the trailer.
Yeah, we only got to really see one called Kazernikov, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which essentially slowed down time for a limited space. And it slowed down time to an insane degree. It's like when you fired your gun, you could still see the bullets moving through the air, and when it wore off, that's when they finally hit your target. And it's the idea of the sort of inhalants allowing you to produce even more abilities on top of all the modifications and the future guns you can use. Some of the future guns were insane. I forgot to even add those to the script. But there is going to be so much room for customization in your character. Like they showed at one point, the detective mode, you can use your scanner to scan your surroundings, and it shows you can either hack into this junction box if you've got a high enough hacker skill, or if you have a high enough engineering skill, you can tinker with it, or you can just go out guns blazing if you have, you know, if you're confident in your combat skill. It is... I keep coming back to this. There is so much choice in this game, and it looks lovely.
It really does. I gotta say, I keep bringing up the fact that this has got really good tabletop feels to it, and and it looks really, really good. The fact that you can customize your character to basically anything with the modifications and the abilities and your skills and your characteristics is exactly reminiscent of a pen and paper game. It's one of the reasons why I love the Fallout series so much, is that you can customize your character to be just about any playstyle that you possibly want to be. So since you got to see the full trailer, Brian, what are your final thoughts on the full gameplay footage?
If this game can pull off what it did in its trailer on a larger scale, it will be groundbreaking for the industry. I don't think I've ever seen a game this ambitious, that looks this polished, that has this many sort of core mechanics to it, that allows for this much choice and this much freedom. If it comes out and it's up to CD Projekt Red's usual standards like The Witcher 3, this will be probably a genre-defining, possibly even medium-defining game.
I honestly feel like this could, almost destroy Bethesda's reputation for being open world choice. Yeah,
this could be the game that people talk about when they just think vaguely of video games. This could supplant Super Mario. This could supplant, Halo. This could be the video game if they pull it off.
Yeah, and I definitely hope it's successful.
Yeah.
Now on to our next topic. Now, while we're all excited to see the gameplay footage of Cyberpunk 2077, finally, people seem to be quite upset with the actual gameplay footage of Marvel's Spider-Man. Back in 2017, we got some E3 footage of the game, and it shows Spider-Man beating up some thugs in a building that's still under construction. And later on, we get to see Spider-Man deal with a boss, along with, I believe the main villain's name was Mr. Negative, or something like that.
Mr. Negative.
And the whole thing looked fine to me. I could even tolerate the quick time events, and I'm usually not a guy who can deal with quick time. They're fine with Kingdom Hearts 2, but for most games, I don't like quick time events. But, however, a few people managed to get early copies of the game. Reviewers, I'm assuming, because usually reviewers for magazines get early copies. Mm-hmm. And they took some screenshots of the exact same scene, comparing it to the E3 trailer. Now, some people were shocked at this and declared that Insomniac has downgraded the graphics on their game. What's their evidence? Well, for one, the puddles are too small. Second,
that's about it.
Well, so far I've come up with the puddles. Some people said that the graphics for Spider-Man's suit is a little not as shaded.
That's because it's in a brighter light. There are fewer shadows because it's in direct sunlight. That's how the sun works. That's how light works. Is when you stand in more of it, there are fewer shadows.
They're also pointing out the graphic details of a random palette that was leaning against the wall and how the shading is different from there, how a building that's outside of the window doesn't have as good graphics quality compared to the E3 trailer. The shadows around the enemies look a bit more generic compared to the E3 shadows we got to see. Thus spawned the controversy known as #Puddlegate.
Okay, before we get into this, I want to point out there are a lot of good reasons that there might... I'm not saying there is a downgrade. Insomniac has denied that there's a downgrade. But even if there's a downgrade, like they said with the building outside having a bit lower graphical quality or the shadows having a bit lower graphical quality, it's because this gameplay trailer from last year, it's not even a year old. It's about a year and a half old, because what a lot of people don't realize about E3 is they work on these presentations for like half a year to polish them to a mere shine. They're also running on more powerful machines, which, you know what, I won't use that as an excuse, because they are deliberately running it on something more powerful than the game will actually run on. So that one is misleading. But there are lots of good reasons. This was an earlier build of the game. It also had a lot of the effects turned off, most likely. A lot of the times with trailers like this, they'll turn off some of the particle effects, some of the leaves blowing around, this and that, in order to make it run better.
There was also the whole sun movement issue.
Yeah, it was a limited gameplay trailer. They probably didn't have the full day-night cycle going around. Also, puddles reflect. Or at least good puddles do. If you're a bad dev, they may just sort of sit there reflecting nothing. But that means you essentially have to mirror everything that's happening at a smaller scale in any environment. So by shrinking the puddle, there's less of an area you have to mirror, which means it's less processor intensive. And that is way oversimplifying this. I am not a game dev. I'm not going to claim to be a game dev. I'm not going to claim to know everything about the process. But there are a lot of good reasons for this. Anyway, back to you.
Yes, so Facebook groups were made. Xbox fanboys are hating on Sony fanboys, laughing at the fact that their exclusive now has poor quality. Reddit has gone nuts, and some gamers have completely lost their minds over Puddlegate.
Yeah, that's hard to do. Gamers losing their mind. I have to see that.
James Stevenson, the community director of Insomniac, made this statement. Quote, The puddles being moved had nothing to do with performance. Pretty sure it was a design/art/usability reason thing. Definitely wasn't performance, as we have spots with tons of puddles in the game with no performance issue.
It is curious he says it has nothing to do with performance, but it might have something to do with usability, because those two things are kind of interconnected. Anyway, I'm willing to believe that they literally just shrank the puddle because it looks better. I actually do think it looks a bit better.
Yeah, definitely. And Insomniac has also come up with other various possibilities as to why the graphics look bad. Screenshots are compressed. Because of compression, the graphics might look a little off with the shading and whatnot. There's also the fact that, again, this is an E3 trailer and that everything's dolled up. But at the same time, I guess I can also understand people's outrage over Puddlegate. Too many times we have been lied to by E3 with too many glorious gameplay footage, which ends up being nowhere near what we got. Watch Dogs is a very good example of us being lied to at E3.
Really, any Ubisoft game.
Yeah, and then there was also The Division, which didn't look too bad, but it was still evident that there was an issue. And then there's also Mass Effect Andromeda, which looked good, it looked decent at least, until we got the final product and everything just blew up.
Yeah.
But
I will say, as someone who yesterday literally spent hours comparing these two images and looking at these images side by side because I was editing your video that's currently up on your channel. It's pretty good. Go take a look.
Nice plug-in.
And there isn't a graphical downgrade. There's a difference in shading, definitely, but that's because the sun is at a different angle. The sun is at a different angle, which means the lighting is different, which means there's different shading, because that is how light works. I can't believe this can be attributed to explaining how light works.
I don't know, man. The whole thing's just gotten out of hand. But all I could sum it up with is it's going to be great. Gameplay is still good. Story is still good. The DLC looks fine, even though I'm a little confused as to why DLC is already being announced before the game is even officially out there for people to play. But
it's the way of the industry. Plus, they have said that the game had gone gold, had finished development before they started working on DLC. Well, actually, no, not before they started working on DLC, because they already have some in the pipeline. But most of it was done before they started working on DLC, which, you know, it's not like stuff is just being carved out of the game. It's separate story missions being added in later.
Definitely. Now we have one last discussion topic because we have a little bit of time to kill, and I really wanted to get this covered because I keep telling Brian over and over and over and over and over he needs to do a video on this for his channel because he is so emotionally invested in this. So please, Brian, tell us about everything leading up to the Cube.
Okay. So if you watched us before, you know we've covered a bit of what's going on in Fortnite. We covered the rocket launch and all the fun things involved with that. You know, the guy setting the record for the most kills, which was kind of a jerk move, but kind of awesome at the same time. Okay, so this all started with a comet. The comet appeared above the Fortnite map, and at the end of Season 3, smashed into it. So the majority of Season 4 was spent around this comet had smashed into it, weird gravity things were happening all over the map, and what a lot of people didn't notice was there was actually a story going on around this comet. The government of whatever world Fortnite is in had come in and started digging into the comet. You might have seen these tents set up all over the comet's landing site, these sort of government agents around, and inside they found an alien. Now, we're not quite sure how this happened, but eventually the alien and the government were working together to create a rocket. The exact purpose of this rocket is unknown, but what we do know is that the alien got into the rocket and blasted off. And in doing this, tore a hole in reality, which I kind of want to know how they built this rinky-dink rocket that tore a hole in reality.
It does raise a lot of questions.
So for all of Season 5, God, I hope I'm getting these seasons right. I may be accidentally counting forward by one. But anyway, for the next season, there was a giant rift in reality above the Fortnite map. And lots of things around the map started to change. An area became a desert, landmarks disappeared, and actually started appearing in the real world. Like one of the hamburger statues actually appeared in the real world desert. But now the rift has closed. And as it was closing, it started shooting out lightning. And out of one of these bolts of lightning came the Cube. The Cube is a giant purple cube. It's covered in runes, and at the beginning, it looked like it had a tiny galaxy in it. Now, I say in the beginning because the cube has started moving. It started moving across the map. And when it stops, it both leaves a rune in the ground, it creates a low gravity field around it, meaning people can jump higher, and it starts replenishing the player's shields. Now, if you hit the cube, it bounces you back. If you jump on top of the cube, it actually throws you in the air high enough that the landing kills you. And now the cube has started picking up speed. It used to be it moved every hour and 40 minutes. Now it's moving every 50 minutes, which math slices that in half. It's also learned how to climb up cliffs.
It's sentient?
I don't know what's happening, okay? I don't know what's happening with the cube. I don't know why it's moving. Is it sentient? Is it just mechanical and guarding something? Is there something inside the cube? I don't
Hey!
I don't know! I don't know what's happening! And I don't know why I'm so invested in this. It's a game I don't even play. Why am I invested in the cube?
Now, a lot of theories are floating around about this cube. Yeah, I believe one rumor that I had sent out, at least, was that this alien was in the rocket ship that got launched and created a rift in space-time. Perhaps that galaxy that was shown within the cube, supposedly, might actually be the universe that an alien has shown up in.
I don't know. This cube has broken me. I don't understand it. I don't know why I'm so invested in it, but I am. I need to know. What's in the cube? Where's it going? It looks like its final resting place might be down by Loot Lake, or it could be up in the northwest of the map. No one knows where it's going. It's not moving in a straight line. It's not even moving in a curve we can predict. It keeps going forward, and then right, and then forward at an angle, and then right again. It keeps moving. There's no pattern to it. What is it doing?
There's got to be answers, man. There's got to be answers out there. You have to talk about it, man. You gotta track it.
What is it doing? It broke me.
Oh, man. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that about does it for today's episode of the Phone Booth. And I just want to say for a quick second, rest in peace to our second script of the show. He got damaged during the research of the cube. So, no, don't eat it. Don't eat the script. No, don't do that. Oh, gosh. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ed Heitman, and the fella eating the script over there is my good friend and co-host, Brian Rodriguez.
It tastes like confusion.
Please tune in every Saturday from 1 to 2, where we try and cover all things pop culture, movies, video games, anime, just about anything. We'll do our very best to cover it. Anyways, you have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon.